Okay, we have Lillian De Loza Gutierrez from Metro LA. She's going to talk about the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. Hopefully you can make it short because we want to get the rest of the people.
I'll try. Thank you. Really quickly, it's a good segue from Bart. My name is Lillian De Loza Gutierrez with LA County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. I'm going to talk about, hopefully I'm not in anyone's way, I'm going to talk a little bit about the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor study that Bart referenced. It is a transit corridor project. We're looking.
Lillian, you could go like the chair. Well, yeah, but I can't see her at the chair.
Does this work better? Is this better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Yeah.
Great. So the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor study is looking at Van Nuys Boulevard, and Metro is looking to see what we could do, and we're planning this project. Currently, we are in the environmental impact report and environmental impact study phase, which is the environmental document that will disclose what our alternatives are and what those alternatives do in terms of impacts to the environment. And we look at a gamut of topics from air quality, traffic, noise. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what the alternatives are, share with you what we've learned so far about the study corridor, and then also what it might look like. So a little bit about Van Nuys Boulevard and what we know about the study area that is basically from Sherman Oaks all the way to San Fernando. In this study area, which is about 9 miles, there's 460,000 people, which is equivalent to the city of Long Beach in terms of population, Atlanta, and Miami. So it's a really dense area. I mean, this area is as big as a city in terms of population base. We know that in this study area, 35% of the population is transit dependent. And we also know that the average bus trips is about 4.7 miles. People get off and on within the study area for the most part. This bar shares with you this is where we have the biggest need in terms of transit. We have a lot of riders that are using Van Nuys Boulevard to travel. And we're seeing that the biggest concentration is in this wider area here, where the red symbolizes where our bus speeds really slow down to less than 10 miles an hour. So it's really important to see that there is more of a need in terms of transit in this area than maybe south of the Metro Orange line. So we've really concentrated our efforts in looking at what we could do to improve transit where there's the most need. Just to mention, it is number second. Van Nuys Boulevard is second in terms of riders in the valley next to the Orange line. Someone would argue that in terms of north-south routes, Van Nuys is number one. Our alternatives that we're looking for Van Nuys is, the first alternative is, these are build alternatives. We're also looking at doing nothing and also making some smaller improvements in terms of signal synchronization, widening maybe of some of the lanes. That's under a transit system management alternative, but I'm really going to focus on what we could do if we built something. So the alternative we're looking at is, there's two modes we're looking at. One is rail and one is bus. So the bus rapid transit alternative would be very similar to what we have on the Metro Orange line. Or in this case, what we have on Wilshire Boulevard. It is a rapid bus, sort of, and it runs on its own dedicated lane. In this alternative, we would run it along the curb in its own dedicated lane. Again, it's very similar to the Wilshire BRT project if you've been on that line. Under alternative 2, we would be looking at a system that would be similar to the Orange line. They would run in the middle of Van Nuys Boulevard, and this sort of gives you a depiction of how it might run in the middle of the street with mixed flow traffic. Alternative number 3 is what Bart referred to as our tram alternative. It really is a light rail. It's a different type of light rail project. In this, and we introduced it because we're trying to see what we could be building in terms of what might be more, what might be better suited for a boulevard. Most of our rail projects currently right now that have been built on railroad right-of-ways, so they have, you know, the dedicated right-of-way, if you will, to build something. Not many light rail projects have been built on city streets. This is probably the bigger one. Right now we're currently building Crenshaw, but this would actually be a larger area to build a light rail. So we're looking at a low floor light rail project. It's not, it's correct. This line would actually run on its own dedicated train track between the Orange Line and San Fernando Road. So from here to here, it would run at street level in its own lane, that not with mixed flow traffic. It's a low floor vehicle, so that means you could board from the sidewalk. Most of our trains, all of our trains right now, you have to get on a station platform to board because they're the higher level rail cars. So this is different. This is new. We're looking at that. And it would have many more stations because we're also looking, well, if we were to take away the local service from Van Nuys Boulevard and we diverted everyone to rail, what does that do? And so we're looking at that as part of the analysis. Then the last alternative we're looking at is a traditional light rail project that is in operation through our metro system. It would be the high floor train. It would run at grade, basically between the Metro Orange Line up until about south of Sherman Way. It would actually go underground because of the conditions of Van Nuys Boulevard. It's pretty congested, pretty narrow. We think we have to cross through the railroad tracks. So we decided that we were going to look to see what it might look like if we were to go down below grade from Van Nuys all the way to about north of Roscoe, so past the Panorama Mall area. It would continue on street level at grade, basically, north of Roscoe, all the way to San Fernando, and then it would continue onto the railroad right-of-way that Metrolink uses right now to get into the Sylmar San Fernando Metrolink station. I say maybe because right now high-speed rail is also looking at that line to run high-speed rail, so it's dependent on whether or not they use that. If they do, that frees up this line. Otherwise, we may have to look at another option. If I can go back to the light rail for San Fernando Road on this option, we would actually be running in mixed flow traffic on San Fernando Road. We would not be using the rover right away. So those are the four alternatives. We don't have a rail facility in the valley right now. If we were to build a light rail project, we need a maintenance facility. So we've identified 3 areas near the railroad right away, near the corridor, to identify where we might want to situate that maintenance facility. We need about 25 to 30 acres. So there will be some relative acquisition of property. We're looking at industrial uses. And so those are the 3 areas that we've identified, basically south of the Orange Line, and then in and around the Panorama City area. And in fact, the neighborhood council in Panorama City said, we want you to look at our community for this facility, which we've identified 2 areas. A quick depiction of what it might look like. This is basically 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. This is what Van Nuys looks like. If you were to introduce a bus, rapid transit in the middle of the street, this is what you might be looking at. Stations would be in the middle of the street. Perhaps we would have a station here and then the other station here. So this station would, carry people going south, and then up here it would be going north, or vice versa. Correct. You have split platforms, correct. This is in front of this building, Van Nuys Civic Center. If we were to introduce that tram alternative, this is what it might look like. Notice we do have the catenary wires. We do have some pedestrian crossings that would be safe where people could cross. We've identified some, landscaping along the way. This is a great street. I know that there was discussion about that earlier today. This area is actually considered a great street, and we're coordinating with the mayor's office on that great street concept. Van Nuys and Victory, again, 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. If you were to introduce a light rail project, this is what it might look like. This is the ramp that would take you up to the high platform station. This is a split station, so one is on one side and then the other one is on this side. Notice we do have a fence. That's only for safety purposes. We don't want people jaywalking and getting into the railroad right away. If we were to introduce that curb running bus rapid transit at Roscoe and Van Nuys, this is what it might look like. We've upgraded our stations along the way. Costs. Bart mentioned we are in the process of updating our long-range transportation plan and potentially go out to ballot measure if our board of directors decides to go in that direction. When this project started as part of Measure R in 2008, this project was identified as a bus rapid transit to complement the Orange Line. When we were out, so $170 million were reserved for that bus rapid transit concept. When we came out to the public in 2011 for the first time, overwhelmingly we heard that the Valley wanted rail. And so we took a step back and we said, let's look at that. What is it? What we want to make sure we study that. And so in the process of our meetings since 2011, we have been looking at that. The costs are telling us that for rail, we're looking at 1.3 for low floor light rail to 2.6 billion for high floor. So there's a big funding gap. We feel we could deliver a bus rapid transit with current monies right now because we could apply for federal and state funds. So we would need to identify funding. If our board decides to go the light rail project, we will need to identify funding. We have an opportunity with potential Measure R. But as Bart said, there's other projects that the Valley also wants, and that's the Sepulveda Pass project, and it's the conversion of the Metro Orange Line. If we were successful with the ballot measure, I don't think that we could do all of them. It's just the reality of things. It's a lot of money. Sepulveda Pass project alone is about $8 billion. And we have to share that money with the entire county. So we are sharing with you what we have, but we are looking at it, and we don't have as staff, we don't have a choice of what we want to do. It's up to our board who will decide that locally preferred alternative.
I have a question.
So that.
We have a dual economy in California. We have the dollar economy, but we also have a carbon economy. And AB 32 funds, have they come available? Are they online? Is raising the sales tax the only option when we have a carbon economy? And in your costs, when you're talking about capital costs, you're missing the slide on greenhouse gas emission costs, because we have a law in our state that requires transportation reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. So this is kind of not giving the audience the full picture of the reality that we have in California. And I wonder if your board is even factoring the fact that they're bound by SB 375, which started out as a transportation bill before it expanded into land use and affordable housing and jobs. Where do I see SB 375 here, or where am I missing it, or is it not even included on?
It's part of the analysis. We're looking at what it does to greenhouse gas emissions. It'll be all disclosed in the environmental impact report, which I should mention is expected to be released later this year, if not early next year. So we are actually drafting that document currently. In terms of funding, we're going to look at every available funding in order to help us meet that funding gap for all of the alternatives. There are, there's cap and trade money, but I don't know if we're going to be able to tap into it because I know high-speed rail has money in there.
Right,
so,
but if you don't bring that up in your presentation proactively, I don't think the average resident is going to be wise enough to, and the slant and the framing that you all are giving is that this Measure R2 is the only option. Measure R2 is not the only option. It's one option. We have cap and trade. It should at least be disclosed for full disclosure so that the community is informed. And I don't believe that, and it's not just you, I'm not taking, you're the person here. I wish the board was here. Please take this message to the board. Not all of us are stupid. And we're seeing where you all are missing half the data.
and quite frankly,
It's not going to provide $40 billion
And the truth of the matter is that those funds that are available in the federal government and the state government, they're shrinking. They're shrinking, and the only reason why we've been able to get a lot of the funding infrastructure that you're seeing right now with the Purple Line and Crenshaw and Expo and the Gold Line is because we taxed ourselves in 2008, and so we said to the federal government, look, we have money. Will you give us more? And they said yes, because we had that backing of the sales tax revenue. And again,
Okay, we need to.
we don't know that either. We're polling. We are doing a lot of things.
Okay, we're going. We're out of the. One question from Cindy.
Earlier you said something about you were from San Fernando down. You were showing the route.
Correct.
And you made a comment with regards to if the high-speed rail, you share something. Could you say that again?
Yeah. So for the segment between Van Nuys Boulevard on San Fernando Road to connect into the Metrolink station. Right now, currently the high-speed rail is a state project, so they usurp the county. They have more jurisdiction than we do. If they decide to use the railroad right-of-way to bring in high-speed rail, we have to wait and see what we could do. Currently, Metrolink is double tracking their railroad right-of-way. There's room for something else. If it's high-speed rail, there's no room for us. So we're going to have to identify how we're going to get there. This is correct. This is a Metrolink railroad right-of-way. If, for instance, high-speed rail says we're going to use this corridor, but we can probably trench, then that opens the opportunity for us to come on top and use it. Now, we understand that they're also looking at going through the national forest.
We need to move along.
So
just because
choose that, then that opens it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Eric Bruins around? And I want to see if we get My LA because I really want to bring the sustainability people like Cassie Oagi and Melanie Winter and Stacy Rains. So if you could do like somewhat like a brief presentation, that would be great. If that. Oh no, I mean Eric Bruins. And Mila, can just yeah, both of you. How much do you need? Because okay.
I believe you.
Yeah, is it a PowerPoint? Okay. And just to, since Eric Bruins is here, we have somebody from the Valley Bikery. They're a local nonprofit organization as far as teaching people how to fix their bikes and doing community rides around Van Nuys. So it promotes a better, healthy lifestyle by riding your bike around town. So Jennifer, can you introduce? Can you give the date? Yeah, but what time? And where do you meet? Mm-hmm. Okay, Eric, you're up.
All right, I'm going to go really, really quickly. My name is Eric Bruins. I'm the Planning and Policy Director for the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. We are a countywide organization that works to make all of communities across the county healthy, safe, and fun place to ride a bike. I want to start by talking a little bit about trends and what's actually happening and kind of where our goal, and this provides a lot of the same context that Mai will cover, that Mai will build off of as well. In LA, we always talk about this kind of super commutes. We have a narrative about trying to travel all across the region. Actually, about half of all trips are less than 3 miles, and so the sweet spot for the transportation system we're trying to build right now is how do we get these local trips to be more accessible, by transit, by walking and biking. The biggest barrier that we see and we hear about constantly for cycling, and particularly the majority of people that want to bike but currently don't, is safety. The Valley has a lot of safety issues, and you can see it's right centered on Van Nuys. So we have a lot of safety issues that are happening outside this building that we got to resolve. Obesity is a huge issue in the Valley and in the region in general. So the main thing that we're working on is we're really trying to focus a lot on infrastructure, because we can promote biking, we can say how great it is, we can have ciclovias and shut down the streets, but if you don't actually provide the infrastructure for people to ride on a day-to-day basis, people don't feel safe. So Maya's going to talk a lot about the infrastructure that's planned. Particularly, we're looking to see more protected bike lanes where there's actually a barrier between the bike lane and the cars, and traffic calming on residential streets to make those connections through the neighborhoods to parks and schools. All right. I'm going to skip a lot of this. Okay. I do want to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. Actually, you know what? I'm going to skip that because Maya will cover this. One of the main things that we do see is, particularly as a neighborhood council, is a lot of times projects kind of come to you really quickly and with very short notice. And the reason that this happens is sometimes because street services and DOT are not that well coordinated. Sometimes street services will black out a street and then ask DOT, what do you want to paint on it? And one of the key opportunities in the Valley is you have a lot of streets that actually are over capacity. You have a lot of speeding. You want to slow down the cars, make it safer. The road diet is really kind of this magic thing that what it does is it makes it safer to cross the street. It makes it safer to drive. It makes it safer to turn left. And oh, by the way, you have some leftover space for bike lanes. So that's kind of one of the main ways in which we get bicycle facilities in places like the Valley. What we're really trying to do more of is work proactively with neighborhood councils to actually identify problem corridors and then solutions. So we've developed a new toolkit called Active Streets Los Angeles that we're looking to roll out with neighborhood councils across the city in the next couple of years. And this basically, it's actually a playing deck of cards of like 45 different treatments that you can do on the streets to make them safer for walking and biking. And we do a lot of education and programs. If you're interested with it as a neighborhood council and supporting some of those, we are more than happy to talk. And that's it.
Okay, we got my LA.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm going to ask one question before you. And also, Mila, go ahead.
Please.
Hi, my name is Mai Law, and I work for the City of LA Planning Department. That is my real name. People they don't think that I am a person, but my.la@lacity.org if you ever need to contact me. I am the project manager of the mobility plan, and the mobility plan is a general plan. It's a chapter in our general plan. And as someone said earlier today, our plans don't make things happen, but they allow for the possibility of things to happen. And with the Mobility Plan 2035, we're allowing for the possibility of other modes to be planned for and talked about in our transportation policy dialogue. So currently, we only plan really for the safety and mobility and circulation of one mode mainly, and that's for vehicles. And while vehicles will still be part of our dialogue, we are planning to add, all kinds of infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians and transit users and people who need to get around in a wheelchair, because we're realizing that we need to think about how a whole different variety of people move around the city. And two important things that this plan is doing is it's redesignating every arterial street in our city. And while that may sound scary, it really just means that we are changing the standard street dimensions and to fit what the actual dimensions of our streets are today. So in essence, a way to look at it is we're changing the classifications to make sure that the streets don't get widened out in the future. And why do we want to do this? Because we know that it's unsustainable to continue to widen our streets. And our streets and our land, it's a resource, and we need to figure out how to better manage that resource and be more efficient in our use of it. So the way we're going about this is this plan is also proposing a component called the Complete Streets Network. And these networks are ideas that of major arterials in our city where we layer different arterials, where one layer is our transit enhanced network. And this network is about getting people on these corridors where buses come frequently, where there's bus bouts, where there's great transit shelters. Another layer is our pedestrian enhanced districts, getting us to those transit corridors and walking. And the third layer is our bicycle enhanced network, and that's a lot of what Eric Bruins just mentioned, building bike lanes and cycle tracks and keeping our bicyclists safe in better bicycle facilities. And our last network is the vehicle enhanced network, because we still have to move cars in our city.
Okay, I wanted to maybe throw something at you guys, because we have a dedicated bike lane along the Orange Line that's right next to certain properties, and one of the ideas is trying to integrate part of the bike lane as a sort of a street initiative, as try to create a design where storefronts could face toward the bike lane, just because it's dedicated, it's off the street. Would you guys be interested in interjecting with planning as far as trying to create some kind of business along the bike lane along the Orange Line?
That's definitely been done really successfully in other places. I'm thinking in Minneapolis, the Midtown Greenway is a very similar situation, where it's an old rail right of way, and the businesses basically have just turned the front of their stores toward the bike path, because it gets honestly more traffic than the roadway. I know also in the river, we have a river improvement overlay district that is also, again, looking at how do the properties face the river and the river bike path. So there's definitely, people are thinking about that, and we'd love to try things out. Yeah,
because I think there's a great advantage along Van Nuys from Hazeltine to Sepulveda, where you have a series of sort of parking lots, warehouses that could be converted into something else. Would be something different that would be unique.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sure.
So again, you're touching on changes being made that really address the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and complying with state law, which is great. We need to do that. What I want to know is, one of the things with reducing autocentricity is that it's going to reduce funding to what's the driver's license? DMV. Gah, I have a mental block with them. And DMV, because we're an autocentric state, is kind of where politicians go to pick our pockets whenever they need a fee or they need to add something. And you know where I'm going with this. Pedestrians and cyclists don't contribute to DMV. So as we're reducing autocentricity, which reduces revenue from DMV, and we're building all this infrastructure, which I am absolutely for, with regard to barriers for multimodal usability, basically. I don't want to pit the cyclists against anyone, and I don't want to pit the pedestrians. I'm talking about, though, in reality, in the real world we live in, our economy is based and dependent on autocentricity. So as we reduce it, how do these changes in multimodal get affected by funding, and how will this impact us moving forward? As someone else earlier just mentioned, the Fed and state transportation funding is dwindling. So at the same time we're losing mommy and daddy, we're also going to be losing the car. And when you walk and when you ride a bike, you don't pay into DMV. So how do we resolve that? And I don't have the answer. I'm hoping you do.
Well, actually, I think there are a lot of misconceptions about how our transportation system is funded. In Los Angeles County, 70% of our transportation revenue comes from our local sales taxes. So these are taxes that we all pay and are not tied to the use of the system. So that's first. And the second thing to understand is that less than 1% of our